What if reality only becomes real when you look at it? What if this video only exists because you're observing it right now? And what if that's not just a coincidence, but a key? You're not here by chance. You're here because something in your life is reaching a collapse point. Something you've been waiting for is already forming in the invisible. And the moment you give it your full attention, it becomes visible. This is not magic. This is quantum physics. And more than that, this is your consciousness remembering how reality really works. Today we're going to explore why your attention is the most powerful creative force in the universe. Why what you see isn't just reflecting what exists, it's selecting what exists. And how changing what you observe changes what you experience, not just psychologically, but physically, neurologically, emotionally, and spiritually. You'll understand why most people unknowingly spend their entire lives observing the wrong things and collapsing timelines that repeat the same pain, same scarcity, same patterns over and over again. Not because they're cursed, but because they never learned how powerful their observation actually is. You'll realize that you're not the character being controlled by life. You're the one observing the character. You're the one with the remote. And the moment you remember that, everything begins to reorganize, because here's the truth. What you look at with emotion starts to take shape. What you observe repeatedly becomes structure, and what you observe as already real becomes inevitable. If you're ready to see why your consciousness is not a passenger in this reality, but the driver, keep watching, because by the end of this transmission, you won't just understand the observer effect, you'll start using it. What is the observer effect, and why it's not just physics? Imagine waking up tomorrow and realizing that nothing in your life has ever simply been. It's always been becoming the moment you chose to observe it. Not metaphorically, literally. That heartbreak you replayed over and over again, you weren't just remembering it, but you were reinforcing it. That dream you couldn't stop imagining even when the world told you it was impossible. You weren't just hoping, you were collapsing it into form, slowly, piece by piece, every time you watched it with your inner eye. The observer effect begins in a lab, but it doesn't end there. It starts with a beam of light passing through two slits. If no one is observing, the particles behave like waves, like possibilities. They spread out, they dance, they exist in multiple states at once. But the moment a conscious observer enters the equation, the wave collapses. The particle chooses a path. Reality decides, not randomly, but in relationship with awareness. The experiment has been repeated countless times. The results are undeniable. At the most fundamental level of existence, conscious observation alters the outcome. This shatters the story we've been taught since childhood, that we are passive witnesses to a fixed world. That reality is out there, solid and cold, unmoved by our thoughts, untouched by our feelings, indifferent to our inner world. But quantum physics whispers a deeper truth, one ancient traditions have always known. You are not separate from what you observe. You are a co-creator with it. Your perception is participation. Your awareness is influence. When you begin to see your attention as an instrument of creation, everything changes. Your focus is no longer innocent. It's not a lens, it's a sculptor. It carves possibility into structure. The thoughts you revisit with fear begin to crystallize into repeating situations. The memories you ruminate on begin to echo into your relationships. The expectations you hold begin to take shape in the very fabric of your experience. You become the artist of your own unfolding, not by force, but by observation. And here's where it gets even more profound. Your observation doesn't just collapse possibility into reality. It selects which version of reality you step into. Right now, infinite versions of you exist. The abundant you, the anxious you, the healed you, the one stuck in patterns. Each of them is equally real in the quantum field. But only one becomes real to you, the one you consistently observe. An observation isn't just with your eyes, it's with your attention. It's with your energy. It's with the emotional charge you give to something. What you fear intensely, what you love deeply, what you dwell on silently, all of it counts as observation. There is no neutral witness. Your presence is always shaping the scene. And the most ironic part? Most people use this power unconsciously. They spend years watching the same emotional movie in their mind, playing the same internal dialogue on repeat, and then they wonder why nothing changes. But nothing can change until you stop observing the same timeline. Nothing new can collapse until you stop watching the old story like it's still true. This isn't philosophical optimism, it's physics. It's the measurable mechanics of attention interacting with probability. And if that sounds too poetic to be real, understand this. Science now knows that what you expect to see actually determines what shows up on the screen. Your beliefs aren't just filters, they're triggers. They tell the field what to show you next. The observer effect teaches us that you are not a separate self, floating through a meaningless universe. You are a conscious node in a web of infinite potentials. You are both the witness and the wand. You are the one who sees, and what is seen responds. Now consider your life. What have you been watching lately? Not with your eyes, with your mind. What patterns have you been feeding with the electricity of your attention? What realities have you unintentionally collapsed into existence by holding them close, even if they hurt? What possibilities have remained as invisible waves, just waiting for you to look in their direction? You see, there is a field of abundance that's been circling you for years, a timeline where your body is healed, where your soul feels safe, where your mind is free. But it won't become real until you observe it. And that's not your fault. It's your invitation. The universe isn't punishing you, it's waiting for your observation, waiting for your participation, waiting for your permission. This is the first truth you must accept if you want to master manifestation or healing or transformation. You don't get what you want. You don't get what you need. You get what you consistently observe, inwardly, emotionally, repeatedly. This is why the observer effect is not just physics. It's not a lab trick. It's not some abstract theory for scientists in white coats. It's the blueprint of your life. And once you understand this, once you realize that every second is a choice to collapse one version of reality or another, you stop being a victim. You stop waiting, you stop fighting shadows, and you start choosing what to see. You start remembering who you are, not the observed, the observer. Your attention is a creative force. There's a truth hiding in plain sight. Every moment you are shaping the architecture of your reality, not with effort, but with attention. You don't manifest with action first, you manifest with focus. And when that focus is infused with emotion, it becomes a force more powerful than anything else in this world. Attention is not just awareness, it is selection, it is energy, it is transmission. Whatever you watch long enough and deeply enough begins to take on mass. And whatever you emotionally fuel with your attention begins to move. Your brain is not just observing the world, it's filtering it, highlighting it, collapsing it. This is where science meets spirit. Your attention determines which electrical signals in your brain fire and wire together. This is how new pathways form. It's how your nervous system begins to treat an imagined event as real. It doesn't care whether what you're focusing on exists yet. It only responds to your emotional consistency. Your attention tells the system, this is important, build around this. And so it does, chemically, electrically, behaviorally, biologically. But this goes beyond biology. On the quantum level, attention is a vibrational alignment device. It acts as a tuning fork, synchronizing your inner frequency with external outcomes. You are not just seeing the world, you are selecting from it. From a vast invisible field of parallel possibilities, your attention, like a scanner, finds the one that matches your inner state. And then, that possibility begins to harden into form. This is not fantasy, it's physics. According to the principles of quantum field theory, particles don't solidify until interaction. And consciousness is the most powerful interaction there is. When you give sustained attention to a thought, that thought becomes more than mental. It becomes energetic. When you pair that thought with a feeling, especially one of longing, gratitude, certainty, or love, you generate an electromagnetic signal strong enough to resonate with patterns in the field. and what resonates, replicates. But here's the problem. Most people don't use their attention consciously. They let their fears hold their gaze. They let their wounds tell them what's real. They let their emotional history dictate what they observe again and again. And without knowing it, they re-enter the same room, the same thought, the same identity, not because it's their destiny, but because it's familiar. And familiarity is one of the brain's favorite shortcuts. Your attention is like sunlight. It will grow whatever you shine it on, weeds or wildflowers. If you spend all day focused on what's missing, you'll see more evidence of absence. If you obsess over worst-case scenarios, you'll collapse timelines of anxiety into your daily experience. But if you shift your gaze, and just slightly, and begin to emotionally engage with what is good, what is unfolding, what is possible, you alter your internal chemistry and your external trajectory. What makes this even more powerful is the emotional charge behind your observation. Emotion is a multiplier, fear is a magnifier, gratitude is an accelerator, indifference does nothing. But if you begin to observe your life through the lens of what's becoming, instead of what's broken, you'll feel the entire field respond. Because the field isn't responding to what you want, it's responding to what you're witnessing with emotional conviction. You've probably heard that attention goes where energy flows, but it's deeper than that. Energy flows where identity resides. If you keep placing your attention in the direction of your pain, your body will begin to rewire itself to expect more pain. But if you choose, and it is a choice, to place your attention in the direction of your desired identity, you will begin to collapse the invisible bridge between you and that version of reality. Every visionary, mystic, and mind scientist has taught this principle. Neville Goddard called it the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Joe Dispenza teaches that where you place your attention is where you place your energy. Jesus himself said, "According to your faith, let it be done to you." In all of these perspectives, the truth is the same. Your attention is a prayer, a broadcast, and a declaration. It is a signal to the field, and the field, without judgment, responds. So what are you broadcasting today? Are you sending out the frequency of lack, of fear, of not yet and maybe one day? Or are you choosing, even when it feels unfamiliar, to observe life from a place of abundance, of already, of alignment? You don't need to do more, you need to observe better. Because observation isn't passive, it's creative. It chooses timelines, it selects futures, it sends signals, it opens doors. Everything you seek is already pulsing in the field. Your job is not to force it. Your job is to find it and with your attention, and stay there long enough for it to recognize you back. The invisible trap. Observing what you don't want. It begins so subtly you barely notice it. You wake up, check your phone, and see the same number in your bank account. You glance in the mirror and your mind returns to the same insecurities. You step into your day, already observing a world that confirms what you feared yesterday. Without realizing it, you've started watching the same life again. Not because it's true, but because it's familiar. And the more you observe it, the more it crystallizes. This is the invisible trap, the cycle of unconsciously observing what you don't want and unknowingly giving it the energy it needs to stay alive. You think you're just dealing with reality, but you're not. You're feeding it, you're reinforcing it, you're collapsing it again and again with the weight of your attention. And that's the secret no one tells you. Your pain stays not because it's strong, but because it's being observed with emotion. Every time you revisit that fear, every time you replay that failure, every time you fixate on what's not working, you think you're analyzing, reflecting, staying informed, but what you're really doing is reactivating, reinstating, choosing. Your nervous system doesn't know the difference between what's happening now and what you're vividly remembering. If you observe it intensely, your brain believes it's real and prepares your body to live it again. This is why people who focus on their pain often attract more of it. It's not karma, it's observation. What you watch with emotional energy tells your inner system, this is who I am, this is what I expect, this is what I'm ready to receive. And the universe, loyal as ever, responds accordingly, not to your desires, to your signal, to your gaze. But here's the twist. Most people don't want to observe their suffering, they just forget they have a choice. The familiar is seductive. The brain is designed to conserve energy, to go where it's already gone before. If you've spent 10 years watching your lack, you'll reach for it again tomorrow. Not because you want it, but because it feels safe to your identity. So how do you break this loop? Not by suppressing what hurts, not by pretending everything is perfect, but by learning the art of redirecting your attention, not with force but with trust. The moment you stop feeding the old frequency with your emotional focus, it begins to weaken, not disappear. Weaken, because its power was never in the thing itself, it was in your relationship to it. This is not about spiritual bypassing, it's not about denial, it's about quantum responsibility, about recognizing that where your awareness rests, your reality roots. If you keep watching the same internal movie, the one where you're abandoned or unseen or always behind, that movie becomes your timeline, not because it's destined, because it's chosen, subtly, repeatedly, emotionally. And here's what no one tells you. Even when you think you're neutral, you're still choosing. Silence is not absence, it's attention without awareness. And attention without awareness is the most dangerous kind because it keeps creating without your consent. You feel stuck. But really, you're just deeply entangled with what you no longer want, still observing it like it belongs to you. Now imagine this. Imagine looking away, not in ignorance, but in power. Imagine turning your gaze from what has always been wrong and gently resting it on what's barely starting to feel right. At first it will feel fake, unstable, even foolish. That's okay. That's just the discomfort of stepping into a new frequency. It's the stretching of attention, the moment it begins to serve you instead of sabotage you. You don't have to fix your life overnight. You just have to stop observing what you no longer want to repeat, because what you withdraw your gaze from begins to dissolve. What you refuse to fuel begins to lose mass. What you stop honoring with your focus stops showing up with force. And in that space, something new emerges. You are not your trauma. You are the one who's been watching your trauma. You are not your mistakes. You are the one who keeps reviewing them. And that power to choose a new object of attention is the beginning of liberation. This is how the loop breaks, not with drama, but with redirection. Quiet, consistent, clear. You stop watching what hurts. You start witnessing what heals. And little by little, the world begins to rearrange itself. Not because it changed, but because your gaze did. You are not the actor. You are the observer. All your life, you've been taught to identify with the character, the one who struggles, who hopes, who fails, who tries again. You've memorized the lines, you've embodied the emotions, you've repeated the story so many times that you forgot it was a story, and no one ever told you the truth. You're not the actor. You're the one watching the play. This realization changes everything because the actor is trapped inside the scene. The observer is free to choose another. The actor reacts. The observer selects. And the moment you shift from being inside the moment to witnessing it, you unlock a doorway most people never find. You enter the seat of awareness, the place where reality begins to obey rather than dictate. It may sound abstract, but it's not. This is the foundation of conscious awakening. It's also the bridge between quantum physics and inner peace. In quantum terms, the observer is not just noticing the state of the system, the observer is influencing it. In spiritual language, awareness is the field where transformation happens. In psychological terms, the shift from identification to observation is the beginning of healing. Think of your life like a film. You've been so immersed in the drama, the relationships, the losses, the ambitions, the regrets, that you forgot you were sitting in the theater. But the moment you pause, breathe, and say, "I am the one noticing this," you stop being the role and become the witness. And in that shift, the power dynamic reverses. The script no longer runs you. You start rewriting it. This is what mystics have pointed to for centuries. In every tradition, there is a teaching about the silent witness, the Atman in Vedanta, the kingdom within in the words of Jesus, the watcher in Sufism, the I am in mystical Christianity. These are not poetic metaphors. They're blueprints for sovereignty. When you observe your experience without becoming it, you stop collapsing into reactions and start choosing responses. And from a neuroscience perspective, this shift is not just spiritual, it's structural. The more you practice being the observer of your thoughts instead of the thinker, the more you activate your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for conscious choice, emotional regulation, and future orientation. In contrast, identification with fear, anger, or shame activates your survival brain, where reactivity rules and awareness disappears. So here's the shift. Every time you catch yourself saying, "I am anxious," or "I am lost," or "I am not enough," realize what's happening. You're collapsing your entire consciousness into a single emotional state. You've gone from observer to actor, and now the emotion runs the show. But the moment you step back and say, "I notice anxiety," or "I'm aware of this doubt," you reclaim your position as the one who sees, not the one who is seen. You don't need to eliminate fear. You just need to stop starring in it. You don't need to fix every thought. You just need to realize you are not the thought. You are the field in which the thought arises. And the more you stay anchored in that field, the silent, stable presence beneath the noise, the less control those thoughts have over your choices, your body, your outcomes. From this place, manifestation becomes organic. You no longer visualize out of desperation. You observe with calm authority. You start to hold images not because you need them, but because they are aligned with your observer's intention. And the universe, which mirrors not your words but your frequency, begins to match that neutrality with opportunity. The actor begs. The observer allows. The actor tries to control every scene. The observer trusts the flow of the unfolding. The actor reacts from the script. The observer rewrites the scene with a single shift in gaze. And what's extraordinary is that life responds differently depending on who you're being. When you live from the actor, the world appears chaotic, threatening, uncertain. But when you live from the observer, patterns emerge, synchronicities align, reality softens, not because life changed, but because the lens did. So right now, notice where you are. In your body, in your mind. Are you inside the emotion, or are you seeing it? Are you trapped in the scene, or are you watching the play? Because the play will continue either way. But your experience of it will be radically different depending on whether you're the actor or the one who remembers they were never on the stage to begin with. How your brain filters reality. RAS and neuroplasticity. You don't see the world as it is. You see the world as your brain is trained to see it. What most people call reality is not objective truth. It's a filtered projection of what their nervous system has been taught to prioritize. You're not looking through a clear window. You're looking through a lens. And that lens is shaped by one of the most powerful, yet invisible systems in your entire brain, the Reticular Activating System. The RAS is a small bundle of nerves at the base of your brainstem. It has one job: to act as a gatekeeper for the billions of stimuli your body is exposed to at every moment. It decides what information is worth noticing and what should be ignored. And the criteria it uses is simple. Whatever you've been emotionally observing repeatedly becomes the standard for what's real. What you focus on with energy, your RAS learns to highlight. What you stop giving attention to, it learns to block out. This means that the observer effect doesn't just happen in the quantum field. It's happening inside your neurology. Your brain is collapsing probability into perception based on the patterns you've reinforced. If you've spent years focusing on betrayal, your RAS will filter the world for signs of distrust. If you've been obsessing over scarcity, your system will only show you evidence of lack, even when opportunity is present. Not because that's all that exists, but because that's all your filter allows you to see. And here's the most liberating part. This filter is not fixed. It's plastic, neuroplastic. It can be rewired, recalibrated, reprogrammed. And the tool you use is not willpower. It's attention. Every time you consciously observe something different, something abundant, loving, beautiful, possible, even if it feels unfamiliar at first, you are telling your RAS, this matters now. This is relevant. This is what I want to see more of. Your nervous system responds to emotional repetition, not logic, not desire, but intensity. This is why gratitude works, not as a performance, but as a reprogramming. When you feel genuine appreciation for something, no matter how small, you increase the salience of that frequency in your system. Your RAS begins to scan for more. You start seeing different things, not because the world changed, but because your inner gatekeeper opened a different door. This is why people say their life transformed when they changed their mindset, because they changed their perception, and perception creates pattern. Your entire brain begins to reorganize when you consistently observe life through a new frame. New synaptic connections form, old pathways weaken, emotional associations rewire. Your beliefs start shifting, not through force, but through sustained attention to a new story. And what story are you telling now? That you're behind, that you're cursed, that things never work for you? Be careful, because the RAS doesn't filter what's true, it filters what's familiar. If you keep telling it the same story, it will keep showing you the same movie. And no matter how hard you try to stay positive, if you're still emotionally invested in lack, your system will override your affirmations and reinforce your fear. But when you choose deeply, consistently to place your focus on a new frequency, everything begins to shift. You stop waiting for proof to believe. You believe in order to see. That's not delusion, that's design. It's how your brain works. It's how your identity evolves, and it's how timelines begin to collapse in your favor. This is why practices like visualization, meditation, and conscious inner rehearsal are so powerful. They train your RAS to recognize patterns of your desired reality before they fully manifest. They prime your nervous system to expect what used to feel impossible, and in doing so, they activate behaviors, insights, and alignments that were previously invisible. So if you've been observing the same pain, the same loop, the same wall, it's not because you're broken. It's because your inner filter has been trained by repetition, and that training can be undone. Not in a day, but with daily choices, with intentional attention, with the decision to gently, powerfully shift what you choose to observe, not just out there, but in here. Because the brain doesn't care if what you're focusing on is real. It only cares that it's repeated. And what's repeated becomes the reference point for your entire reality. The identity of the observer. You become what you witness. You're not manifesting from your thoughts. You're manifesting from your identity. And identity isn't who you say you are. It's who you observe yourself to be over and over again in the silence of your own mind. It's not what you hope for. It's not what you post about. It's what you're watching play out internally, day after day, as if it were a documentary you forgot you were directing. Most people are unconsciously loyal to an old version of themselves, a version built on disappointment, rejection, delay. And they don't even realize it because it doesn't feel like a belief, it feels like reality. But the truth is, it's a loop, a vibrational identity loop, created by what you continue to witness within yourself. You're not stuck because change is impossible. You're stuck because you're still observing the same character. Everything you think you want, love, wealth, health, purpose, already exists as a fully formed version of you in the quantum field. Not in potential, in presence, right now. That version of you breathes differently, speaks differently, responds to life from a different place. But until you observe yourself through that lens, you won't collapse that version into your reality. Not because it's unavailable, but because you haven't tuned your awareness to it yet. Observation isn't just about seeing outcomes, it's about embodying the observer who receives them. If you continue to observe yourself as the person who's trying, hoping, almost there but not quite, your nervous system will align with that state. Your RAS will filter your world to match it, your emotions will reinforce it, and you'll keep calling it reality. But identity is not fixed, it's fluid. It's programmable. And the key to shifting it is not forcing change, but changing what you observe about yourself. Instead of saying, "I want abundance," you begin to watch yourself as someone who expects it. Instead of visualizing success as a distant fantasy, you observe yourself moving through life with the calm frequency of someone for whom success is already familiar. This is what creates coherence, when your observation of self matches the timeline you're trying to manifest. It's the moment your frequency becomes believable to your body. And once your body believes, your world responds. Because manifestation doesn't begin with goals. It begins with self-perception. You don't become what you want. You become what you continuously observe. That's the real secret behind embodiment. It's not acting as if, it's observing as if. It's watching your own life from the point of view of someone who is already there. And doing that with enough emotional consistency that your nervous system stops resisting it. You're not lying to yourself. You're collapsing a version of truth that already exists. This is why gratitude in advance is so powerful, not because it tricks the universe, but because it trains your nervous system to expect what hasn't yet happened. And what the nervous system expects, it prepares for, it filters for, it aligns with. You become the observer of a new self. And reality, as always, cooperates. And here's something most people miss. You don't need evidence to start observing a new identity. You just need willingness. Evidence comes later. Observation comes first. That's the reversal that creates miracles. You don't change once things improve. Things improve once you change who you're watching yourself be. So what are you seeing when you look inward? The one who waits, or the one who receives, the one who reacts to life? Or the one who rewrites it with their attention? The one who is always healing, or the one who is already whole? The field doesn't care which version you choose. It just listens. It responds. It waits for you to stop observing from the past and start observing from the self you were always meant to remember. Because identity isn't found, it's witnessed. And the moment you shift your gaze, everything shifts with it. Quantum reality is listening. Observation as a broadcast. You've been taught to believe that observation is passive, that you look and something appears, that you notice and life just continues. But in the quantum field, the act of observing is not a reaction, it's a command. Your observation doesn't simply watch the world unfold, it instructs it. It sends out a frequency. It tells the field, this is what I expect to receive. And the field responds, precisely, loyally, neutrally to that frequency. This is why most people live in loops that seem unbreakable, not because they lack power, but because they're broadcasting the wrong signal without knowing it. They look at lack and call it awareness. They look at pain and call it realism. They look at struggle and call it growth. But what they're really doing is anchoring timelines and broadcasting energy that says, this is who I am, this is what life is. The universe isn't judging that broadcast, it's amplifying it. Your attention isn't a light beam, it's a transmission tower. It sends information, it carries data, and that data, encoded with emotion, with belief, with memory, travels into the quantum field like a ripple, touching potential realities, collapsing some, bypassing others, magnetizing what matches. This is where phase locking begins. In physics, phase locking happens when two vibrating systems begin to oscillate in sync. When you're in a frequency, your emotions, your expectations, your inner vision becomes coherent and consistent. The field begins to lock onto it. Your desired reality starts to recognize you as a match, and what was once improbable becomes inevitable. Not because you forced it, but because you finally aligned with it. The observer doesn't chase, the observer aligns. The observer doesn't beg the universe to respond. The observer tunes themselves to the frequency of what they're ready to receive and trusts the field to deliver it at the speed of resonance. Your emotions are not just moods, they are modulations. They tell the field what tone you're in, what tempo you're ready to dance with, what timeline you're becoming compatible with. This is why you can't fake energy. You can say the right words, you can repeat all the affirmations. But if your dominant emotional frequency is still rooted in doubt or fear or self-rejection, your broadcast is scrambled, and the field mirrors confusion. But when you stabilize into a frequency, even a subtle one like calm or quiet trust, something happens. The field begins to mirror clarity. Coincidences arrive with eerie timing. People speak the exact words you needed to hear. Opportunities show up before you knew you needed them, and none of it feels like effort. It feels like rhythm. Your job isn't to create reality from scratch. Your job is to become clear enough in your broadcast that the version of reality you desire can recognize your signal. It's already there, waiting. It's been there, waiting. But it couldn't find you through the static of mixed emotions, mixed thoughts, mixed identity. You have to understand this field is intelligent, but it's not emotional in the way you think. It doesn't respond to need. It responds to coherence. It doesn't give based on effort. It gives based on frequency match. So if you've been trying, pushing, striving, hoping, but still watching the same old self, your signal is misaligned. And no matter how deeply you want something, the field won't collapse what you're not consistently transmitting. So shift your transmission. Not with force, but with presence, with breath, with micro decisions, with the simple choice to observe a different self, a different world, a different outcome, again and again, until your body believes you, until your emotions stabilize, until your signal becomes clean. At that point, reality has no choice but to organize around you. You're not waiting for life to change. Life is waiting for your signal to come through clearly. You are the collapse point. There's a moment, invisible to the eyes but undeniable to the soul, when everything begins to bend toward a new outcome. It's not marked by thunder or signs in the sky. It's quieter than that. It's internal. It's subtle. It's the moment your awareness becomes so aligned, so still, so unwavering, that the field stops offering probabilities and begins to offer you presence. This moment is the collapse point. And you, not your desires, not your plans, not your past, you are the point of collapse. The collapse point is where observation becomes selection, where your focus stops orbiting potential and finally chooses form, where the version of you you've been observing from a distance steps forward and becomes embodied, where timelines that were once flickering around you begin to fuse into one lived reality. This is not a mystical event reserved for a few. It's a biological, neurological, energetic shift that happens when you stop splitting your gaze between who you were and who you're becoming. Most people never reach this point because they keep glancing backward. They say they want change, but they continue to emotionally observe the self they've always been. They rehearse old thoughts, react to familiar triggers, and collapse the same reality again and again. Not because they're weak, but because they don't realize they're doing it. They've mistaken observation for memory, but memory is not passive, it's creative. Every time you recall a version of yourself and emotionally engage with it, you reinforce it, and your brain doesn't know you're remembering. It believes you're rehearsing. But when you begin to observe something new, not just conceptually but with repetition and feeling, your body begins to update, your brain begins to rewire, your electromagnetic field begins to emit a different signal. And that signal changes the trajectory of your life. You don't need more time, you need more coherence, because coherence is what makes the collapse point possible. It's what tells the field, this is not a possibility anymore, this is a choice. And that's the most powerful truth. Reality doesn't happen to you, it happens through you. When you become aligned enough to collapse it with clarity. Your thoughts are not just noise, your emotions are not just waves, they're signals. They're vectors, they're acts of selection. And the more consistently you observe from a state of wholeness, the faster reality bends to reflect it. You're not here to chase outcomes, you're here to observe so clearly that outcomes begin to organize themselves. You're not here to fix a broken life. You're here to stop observing the version of life that was never meant to last. You're not here to become someone new. You're here to remember the version of yourself that's always existed and finally collapse into it. And this is the difference between the seeker and the creator. The seeker keeps watching for signs. The creator watches from certainty. The seeker waits for confirmation. The creator collapses what they've already chosen to see. The seeker tries to believe. The creator observes until belief becomes inevitable. The field isn't waiting for your perfection. It's waiting for your precision. It's waiting for your observation to stop scattering across old stories, half-held desires, and emotional contradictions. It's waiting for you to look, fully, consistently, at the version of yourself that already has what you thought you were waiting for. Because everything you desire is already vibrating somewhere in the spectrum of potential, but it can only come close when you stop observing from lack. It can only become real when you stop switching timelines with your doubt. It can only collapse when you become still, in identity, in focus, in faith. That is the moment it arrives, not as magic, as coherence, as congruence, as the field saying, "Now that you've chosen, I can respond." This is not the end of your becoming. This is the beginning of your remembering, that you were always the one observing, that you were always the one with the power to choose what becomes real. That every version of life is still available, but only one is being collapsed by the gaze you hold today. You are not the reflection. You are the observer of the mirror, and the mirror is waiting.